Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Franz, Sidney. We are extremely happy to have you with us today in Create with Franz. And I was just thinking with my friend who is right here in front of you, Dawn Ledet, and I was just like, what are the tools that we really need to develop the next part of our life and being a self trust coach? Dawn will do all this for us. So, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It is an honor and a privilege. And I'm excited to share with your audience what the skills are that we need to develop to grow in that next level. And as you so beautifully said, self trust is the secret key. It's the strategy that makes all other strategies work.
That's what I want people to know. Okay, there's no time to come off. She hasn't told you the strategies. There will be more. But it's more than that. That's just the beginning. You have to follow the journey, understand how she went from working in totally different fields and even getting to a burnout, and then arriving to the conclusion that here's where I have to go. I trust myself. And in this, there will be the faith in God and in Jesus Christ all woven in, because that's also a pivotal moment for her to realize that she's got the potential to do this. But does she trust herself? So, when do we start? Do we start with your hospitality work or
We
entrepreneur?
absolutely can. I think it's a great place to start because it is the impetus of this work. It is where I realized the lack of self trust in my life and the impact that that was having on everything that I did and didn't do. And so I was in the hospitality industry as a leader. I ran sales and marketing teams for multiple hotels. And I was in that industry for over 2 decades. And I did really well. I moved up quickly and was paid really well, was compensated really well. And I overworked, but I was really aware of that. And I'd sort of grown up with the belief that you work hard for less money when you're younger so that you can work less hard for more money later. It's kind of what was brought to me growing up. And so working it hard just wasn't a problem for me. I enjoyed it. I saw it as having really good work ethic. I just really loved what I did. So it was a really beautiful marriage of all of those things. But as I got to my latter part of that career, not that it needed to be the latter part, this is in hindsight, we know it's the latter part, but I started to really experience burnout, like overworking and underliving is how I would say it. And it was to a point where I knew I was inserting myself in problems that weren't mine to solve. I was going to work way too early and leaving work way too late. And I was miserable. And I started to become keenly aware of how all my conversations were around work, even with my friends. Like I was starting to see myself as incapable of talking about anything else because that's what I was doing all the time. So I had this desperate attempt to reclaim something of me, to reconnect to like, who am I outside of this overworking and underliving and what has gone wrong here? And I thought I had this brilliant idea to sell my car, not for money reasons, but because it would force me to walk 2 miles to work and 2 miles home from work. So in my mind, I was like, okay, this is how I'm both going to make sure that I go to work at a normal time because I'm not going to get up, that much earlier. And I will leave at a normal time because where I live in the city, you don't want to be walking when it's too early or too late. So, and in addition to having me work normal hours, I would also be moving my body more because the way I was working, it was unhealthy. I was sitting at my desk most of the time. I was eating at my desk. I was eating whatever was in the, like restaurant food, which isn't delicious, but not healthy. Eating that all the time is not healthy, at least not the options I had available. So on one of those walks where I was feeling very proud of myself for having forced myself to really do this, I had this like sudden epiphany. Like, why am I having to force myself into boundaries that I want? And that was like this flood, just that question to myself. All of a sudden, there was this flood of examples from my whole life of how self-trust was lacking, how I did need, in my mind, external boundaries to set for myself. I needed external approval, validation. I was reaching for outside of myself for the answers that actually could have been found within and would have made such a big difference in how I move forward. So I always want to make sure that people know that I accomplished a lot without self-trust. So it's never to suggest that you don't, that you can't, because of course you can. But the price of it, the cost of it, is disconnection from yourself, disconnection from your own wisdom and your own intuition. And it's a lot of proving energy, which is so exhausting, instead of being fueled by your inner knowing, your connection, your like, with, you know, everything that you know and have available to you and how you learn and how you grow. And then you can go out and seek. There's nothing wrong with seeking external information, but it's the order of it that was taking away from my own connection to myself.
That makes sense. And what a wonderful journey there, right? The realization, sometimes the simple things. And what was your next step? How did you fix your issue then?
Well, I just knew that I had to get out. So again, it's baby steps, right? So I still was reaching for external boundaries. I was forcing external boundaries. So for me, that meant leaving my industry. I know now that that was still a good choice, but it is representative of me not just turning in and doing the work inward that I would now do before making those decisions. It was the best decision I ever made. So sometimes even decisions that come from not the best place still work out, which is great to know, right? It takes the pressure off. But so I left and started doing that work on myself. So I always knew I was going to start my own business. I didn't quite know what it was going to be, but I began that process with leaving the industry I was in. I had already started an LLC like a year before, kind of waiting on me because it was in the works, but I wasn't trusting myself yet. So that also became abundantly clear of why would I start a business legally start a business, but not actually start a business. And so I really started working on self-trust because I knew I didn't want to build a business the way I had built my career. I knew I didn't want to build it on hustle and a lack of self-trust and on overworking and underliving. I just never wanted to go back there. So it was important to me that I fix the trust issue first, and then I could build the business from that beautiful place. And I could do it simultaneously. It actually was such a great exercise. That's why when I talk about the 3 skills it takes to achieve anything, one of my unique skills that has always been since the beginning of my career is that I'm really good at seeing past the noise. And that's played really well into this work with self-trust because I could see that really all it took to achieve anything would be make decisions, follow through on those decisions, and then have your own back with what happens with that. And to me, what having your own back means, a lot of people mistake that for being nice to yourself. I mean, yes, you should always be nice to yourself, but that's not what having your own back means. It means to take the realization, the data, the results that come from making decisions and following through, and to use that data, evaluate for data, not drama, and to celebrate strategic celebration, which means celebrate the lessons, the wins, and the like growth that you have, because you cannot have a result, good, bad, unwanted, wanted, otherwise, without there being something for you to celebrate that either grows you, stretches you, or informs you. Everything. So when we use that information, when we have our own back with the data, then we are informed to make the very next best decision. And you cannot not reach a goal if you follow that path. It's really that simple. But it requires that those 3 steps be fueled by self-trust. Because what happens when you don't trust yourself is decisions get remade and made over again and made again and questioned and second guessed. When you don't have self-trust, follow through looks like pushing it forward on the calendar over and over again, never actually completing it. It means starting it and then questioning it over and over again. It means sitting in perfectionism. Oh, it's not good enough yet. Oh, it's not good enough yet. Right? And then without self-trust, that whole having your own back piece, not having your own back, actually, it looks like making the data mean something about you. So it didn't work, so I must not be the right person. I can't do it. It must just be me. I'm not good enough. But instead, it's like, hey, it's just data. It's not drama. I can celebrate myself for having gotten this result that's not wanted, but it shows me what I can try next. And I can see that, oh, this way doesn't work. It's not me. It's this particular, maybe there's one small tweak. If we get lost in the drama of it's about me and I must suck or whatever you think, you don't get the useful data that informs the next best step.
Totally agree. The data there to tell us what's actually happened, So feedback, going back and say, okay, there was the reach. I didn't reach 100 people. I reached 10. What could I do better next time? So I reach 100. Well, how was my strategy? So looking back, instead of bashing ourselves,
Yeah.
I had to change niche completely. I have to change. It's always the same, isn't it? And I'm sure you notice this with your over 6,000 coaching clients.
6,000 coaching sessions, yes.
Wow.
When I first got certified as a coach, I knew that I wanted to be the best. I mean, that is part of, I don't have to change that by building self-trust, right? In fact, it becomes rewarding and filling when you're doing it from a place of self-trust instead of from a place of proving yourself. I didn't want to do it because if I didn't, I wouldn't be good enough. I wanted to do it because I wanted to serve a bunch of people, and I knew that the more coaching sessions I could get in, the better. So I was really fortunate to secure this coaching contract. So I was running my own coaching business, and then I had a contract with a big company where I would coach 20 hours of 20-minute sessions every week. So that was 60 sessions that I was doing every week for over 3 years. So it was a lot of coaching reps. And with what was so great about that, because here I am working on my own self-trust, right? And I'm watching how self-trust is showing up, or the lack of it, in all these different humans, because they were everything from entrepreneurs to leaders to stay-at-home moms. It covered the gamut of all these different humans, different male, female, non-binary, professional, not professional, craft, homeschool, all these different types of beautiful, amazing humans. And we all experience a lack of self-trust. And I started to see patterns within their very unique circumstances, very unique humans, but patterns in how we showcase our lack of self-trust and how it affects the decisions we're willing to make, the risks we're willing to take, when we're willing to follow through or not follow through on something, and how we handle what happens on the other side of those decisions and follow through or lack of follow through. And I really saw the power of choice and agency. And I see that as a key component of not having self-trust. And I want to make clear, it's none of our faults. We erode our self-trust from very little. It's like very not meant to be that way. It's not on purpose. It's not with ill intent, but it's just through normal socialization that we want to belong and we want to be part of a group and we want to be accepted. And so sometimes in that quest, that very normal quest, we see differences in ourselves as something that is not great, that can be dangerous, or could be unsafe or a threat to our belonging. And in that, we start to question our own inner knowing and we start to rely on others. So
you're going very deep. It's so fascinating to see how you're looking at it and understanding this is what's going on, this is what's going on. But in reality, a lot of people don't see all that, do they?
yeah,
They kind of navigating this, oh, nothing works, all my jobs fail, my relationships fail, I'm probably just a failure myself. Why was I even born? Because nothing works. And perhaps it was so simple. Look up at all these little
yeah.
mechanisms, parts that are there that should align properly. And you talk about also when you talk about trusting, but then surrendering, and then obeying. And that's the other
Mm.
layer. How did you get to that point?
Well, you mentioned something in between there that was really
Sure.
key to me getting there. And that was that self-talk, that automatically jumping to I'm not good enough, or why mine was what's wrong with you? That's what used to come up for me all the time. And it could be the smallest thing, like my shoes untied. And I would say, oh, what's wrong with you? And to me, I'm kind of a dry humor kind of person. So I thought it was funny. I didn't really see the damage it could be doing internally. So that's when else I noticed during all those coaching sessions. And so I wrote a book called Master Your Inner Dialogue. And it's the shortest book you'll ever read. I think it's like 45 pages, and it's very pragmatic. As I told you before, I really do like to cut through the noise and cut to the chase. And it really shows you that we don't have to. There's a lot of talk out there about self-sabotage and naming your different saboteurs and, pitting ourselves against ourselves. And I see such a flaw in that system. And I really wanted people to, instead of trying to either change their thoughts or give personalities to their different thoughts, I just wanted them to create an internal united front, a relationship with those thoughts. Because we don't have to believe everything we think, but we also don't have to battle with it. And when we're battling internally, it makes, like, the actual battles that are coming at us every day, the challenges and the frustrations, it makes it so much harder to address them when we're already fighting a battle internally. And so I really wanted to give a pragmatic guide to changing your relationship with your inner dialogue so that you were more equipped to face these external challenges, so that you were doing it from a united front. And so through that exercise of writing that book, I decided to do a consumption fast. And what that meant for me was shutting down all external input. Now, obviously, I was still coaching, and I would write and do a bunch of, listening to myself and putting out work. But I wasn't reading any books. I've stopped listening to podcasts because I was a person who would have a TV on in every room just to have the noise to drown out my own thoughts. I would have a TV on in every room. I'd have maybe a podcast on in my ear. I might even be reading an audiobook. There was a lot of noise happening. And so I decided to do a consumption fast, which meant shutting all that down. And it was supposed to last, I say the plan was 3 months. I don't even know if it was that long. It might have been 3 weeks. It went on for almost 3 years. And the power of that, I'm not recommending everyone do that for 3 years, but the power of taking that time to listen to your internal wisdom is so powerful, because there's so much that you're shutting out. And when we shut out the noise, so there's what I call the lobby noise, which is the loud part of our brain that we do often want to shut out. It's not harmful necessarily. It's just like, it's the thing that your dad used to say when you were younger. It's that person that you really respect, some things that they say. It's what your friends talked about doing next weekend. It's full of just familiar kind of noise, but like a noisy lobby, it's a lot at once. But there's a door and we can go into the inner room. And I think we need to make the time to do that, because in that door is not what you're considering that mean voice. It never is. Through that door is your intuition, your inner knowing. It's the part of you that knows you're worthy and capable of more. It's the you that is hopeful and dreams. And my gift of that time was when I stopped drowning out the noise and I started to walk into that inner room and sit with that quiet, as that's where I found Jesus. That's where I found God inviting me in and inviting me not only on this journey to trust myself, because that was just the window. The real truth was I was being invited to trust him, to trust in the only one that can 100% always be trusted.
How beautiful. And remember, there was something that I like to quote a lot because I like it. It says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Yeah.
And when we're not still, when there's all this noise, internal or external, or both together, it's a lot of clutter, and our mind cannot really focus on the real strategy and direction because we are lost. It's just too much multitasking. So isn't that amazing that the scriptures tell us to focus, to be still, to pray, to ponder. And instead what we do, we scroll on social media, we put music on, movies, sport, whatever. We talk, and then this inner chat is just there, just telling us and reminding us. Sometimes I'm just sitting here doing something and then suddenly I have a flash memory of something that happened when I was 7. How did it get there? What was the pertinence? Isn't that funny? And I'm sure 90% of the world population experiences this. So what are your tips for getting out of this situation? You told us already, but the tips that a person could just say today, okay, I've listened to this podcast. Dawn said it. I now want to do something today. I really want to crack this. Where do we start?
Here's the gift that I think when you mentioned my book, Trust, Surrender, Obey. So in that, that's what first came to me when I first started listening, really listening. And I'll tell you, the first part of that consumption fast, I was in the chatter, in the lobby noise, what I refer to as the lobby noise, for a while, until I started to really get practiced at just quieting down and calming down and moving in. And I was starting to go to church a lot more as well. And so here's what I offer that I learned after the fact. I always like to share what you can do now that took me way too long to figure out. But I knew that I needed to start not just trusting, but I needed to surrender a lot because I was carrying so much. And then the third piece was going to be obey. And I had no idea how I was going to do that. But what I learned that was so effective is you just start to notice the extraordinary in the ordinary. You notice the mundane. So here's what I did. And this is exactly what Trust, Surrender, Obey is about. It's called Trust, Surrender, Obey, Faith Lessons for My Dogs. I would walk my rescue dogs and I would say things to them, like some of it not always nice. Like I would say it from frustration, like, are you trying to be difficult? And then I would hear it back to me and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I am trying to be difficult. Like I am making this so much more difficult than I need to be. So I would hear my words I was saying, I would hear them being said back to me by God, basically. Now, whether he was actually saying them back to me or not, I just started to think about what would he think about this situation? Knowing that he's a loving, faithful, kind, loving father, not as a punisher. Don't, I invite you to be clear on that first, that it's pure love that will always be coming your way. And so looking for that in just the ordinary. So for me, it was my rescue dogs and the things I would say to them, like, you're safe. You know how much I love you. You're such a good girl. Like, I would just hear that back. And when you start to do that, you look around and you see the beauty of some of the things that we probably look at every day and take for granted, that they're just a given, that they're just there. And that position of gratitude or appreciation just is, you can't be grateful and feel terrible at the same time. You really can't.
So true. In fact, gratefulness is one of those things that really allows us to focus on the positive. And then the brain starts to do one thing. It starts to look for possibilities. Then the
Yes.
reticular activation system is like, what can be possible if I do this and if I do that? Well, if you look for impossibilities and for problems, that's exactly what we're going to find, because the brain will always think that we are correct and we are truth. The truth is always in us. We always think we are right and the other people are wrong. That's how the world goes. That's how the mind works. And so when we realize, well, actually, isn't it beautiful, the blue sky I have right in front of me now, with all these fluffy clouds, such a beautiful blue. Is I can see now, just like your top, Dawn. That blue is really beautiful. And some people can look at the cloud as all these gray clouds. I'm looking at the blue there. So
Mhm.
it's a choice what to focus on, isn't it?
Yes, it's perspective. And that's what I always share. Don't be hard on yourself. If your perspective is the gray, work with it, but give yourself the full story. That's why I say I don't want you to always think positive. If you don't want to think positive all the time, don't do it. Like, that's just that actually trying to force yourself into thinking positive thoughts, like people recommend affirmations. If that works for you, I love it. If it feels like you're lying to yourself, all you're doing is actually fracturing your self-trust. So I don't want you to do that as much as I just want you to tell yourself the whole truth. So yes, the sky has got gray clouds and this beautiful blue. Both are true. And I don't have to focus on one or the other. But if I do, I want to be honest with myself. I'm choosing to focus on the gray. And that's okay. What an amazing power you have to make that choice. But owning that as a choice is where your power lies, because you can change a choice whenever you're ready. It's really hard to change if you consider yourself a saboteur, or like I'm always self-sabotaging, or if you consider yourself a procrastinator or a perfectionist. When you label yourself as something, it's harder to change. Instead of, I choose to say I'm going to do something, and sometimes I choose not to do it, even though I said I was going to do it. I said I was, like procrastinating. I chose not to take that action at that time. It's so much more powerful. It's the tiniest of shift, but it goes from you pitting yourself against yourself to empowering yourself with choice that you can absolutely change.
Magnificent. And I think I could just start tomorrow. Maybe I should procrastinate this next week. Should we do this in January? Because now I'm too busy for this. So, what can we say to the people? Like, here are my tips, but how do we get started now instead of procrastinating this? What is your best idea?
When it comes to procrastination, one, it's just a choice. I would say start practicing not even calling it procrastination. Just, I said I was going to do this and I chose not to. I'm choosing to move it till tomorrow. I'm choosing to move it to next week. And do I like my reason for that? And if I do, great. If I don't, let's look at it. Why don't I like that? What do I want to do instead? It becomes a partnership instead of a battle. The next piece is procrastination can sometimes go back to the decision point. We kind of focus on like, oh, I keep moving forward, I keep moving forward. And sometimes we blame other things and we start to judge ourselves. Sometimes there's a real reason why you're moving it forward. So I also like to say, like, if I'm having my own back and I'm being honest with myself, let's look at the decision behind that task. Am I moving it forward because it's no longer necessary? Did I not Do I no longer need it? Is there a next level version of this that actually fits better than the original idea? Did I not make a firm decision? Those are my three questions for that, because wobbly decisions lead to wobbly follow through. And I think it's so unfair to judge yourself for procrastinating, for making that choice to move it forward, if the decision wasn't firm in the first place. So I always offer for people to really go back to the decision part. And look, I have a whole framework about, it's called Decide and Do. And it's, how do I firm up the decision? Because it's going to make the follow through piece so much easier.
Perfect. I can't even add anything. This is just jewel. Is there anything that we have left out that the readers and audience would love to hear from you today?
I mean, I just hope always that you see yourself as your best partner and advocate, because you're amazing and there's no one else like you, and no one else can do exactly what you do the way you do it, whether it's momming or lawyer or doctor, whatever it is. You bring a unique set of skills and experiences to it. And so I just want you to fall in love with that, because it makes building self-trust, being your own partner, and everything else becomes so much easier. Every decision you make, every follow through you make becomes so much easier.
Brilliant. And we can be our own worst enemies when we start. So why don't we start loving ourselves and giving us a chance? That doesn't mean sit down and do nothing. It just means looking back and say, okay, what can you learn from this? What can I do better? What can I change? Small things. You know, we always say if you're in an airplane, 1 degree change in your direction in the compass makes a massive difference when you arrive on the other side of your itinerary. And in life, sometimes a small little thing like taking some time in the morning instead of rushing out of bed, take 2 seconds to be grateful for something, to start in a positive way, to calm yourself down instead of starting with adrenaline. It's just a small thing, but it can change a life. Isn't that incredible? Small things.
Yes, and I love, like, true love is never going to come without action. So of course it doesn't mean that you'll sit around and do nothing. True love is action in motion. And if you remember, this is also was very powerful for me. To not love yourself is to argue with God, because he says that you're lovable. He says that you are infinitely lovable. And so I wonder who's right.
So God will win any conversation, right? But I always remember this, we're always fighting about who is right. But in the end of the day, something that was told 30 years ago by a friend to me, and I was in Greece on my mission for the church, and it was Elder Bushnell, and he said, it doesn't matter who is right. It matters what is right. For me, that was like, woo, mind blowing.
Right.
Because sometimes that's the thing. It's not about fighting with ourselves or with the system. And it's really realize what is the right thing to do now. And having maybe the wisdom and the guidance from God, and then listen to ourselves, knowing what is resonating, knowing what's the work that needs to be done. And you guys, this is not an easy thing, but it can be done.
Yeah, but it means having that relationship with him, because even when we get caught up in what's right based on our own opinions and our own sense of justice, that's a painful way to live too, because that's where resentment comes in, and guilt and regret. And so even it's not what is right, it's what is right from God. What does he say? But it's so hard to discern. I don't mean to say it in any way like this is easy. It's a lifelong challenge that is worth embarking on. I will say that, but that's where trust, surrender, obey came in, because I think true freedom comes in trust in the only one that is always rock solid, trustworthy. surrendering what is not yours to carry and your own idea of right and wrong, surrendering that to his will and his right and wrong, and obeying his word and his, you know, that when you build relationship with him, instead of living in the law of it, because I think that's what so much of the Bible teaches us. And that's why we have so much division in the world, is people's interpretation of right and wrong, and rules without relationship is what's broken about us. We have to have the relationship, and it makes the rules make so much more sense. And that's where we get freedom and peace and unity and community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think that God is on our side at all times. He is the loving Father, and He doesn't want anything else but that we succeed. We have to do this because He designed us to succeed in something. And we might say, oh, we don't have a talent. I'm not good enough. Stop talking rubbish. We all have something. Even a person who's been, total failure in their own words, there'll be some talent that they use. Even to be in a gang, you need talent. Even to be homeless, that's from my coaching some 10 years ago. I remember the coaching trainer said, a homeless person is full of resources. That's how he's not dead.
Yeah, they're incredible. That goes to that point of us focusing on flaws instead of features. Like, yeah, I could stand over here and stare at my lack of ability to sing, and I could like begrudge it and be angry about it. And I could just, why would you make me, God, someone who can't sing? Or I could look at all the things I'm amazing at that he did gift me with and utilize those and spend more energy on the fruit that can come from what he's given me instead of focusing on what he hasn't. And the reason why I can't sing is probably so someone else can. I don't know. And it's to humble me, because I do show up and sing for my church. And it's pretty funny because I actually do it on a mic, just me. It's terrible. It's always awful. People have even told me it's fine, but it's my way of humbling myself and showing God that I'm willing to show up anyway, and showing my fellow parishioners too, right? Like they joke with me about it, but they don't want to do it. They respect me for doing it, even though I don't have that skill.
Yeah. I always say, why, God, didn't you give me an amazing voice for singing? And then I'm like, yeah, but I already have the talent, the passion for this, and what am I doing with them? And if I have even another talent, I will be just so spread out. So God gave us all multiple talents.
Yeah.
You could be a good listener. You could be very wise and able to organize. You could be the friend of everyone. You could be artistic. You can be sporty. We all have this stuff. We just have to discover. And sometimes it is by giving service, by giving ourselves to others, that we realize that I think that's why you go so well, because you've done years of service. You have a core of your thing is service, service,
Yeah.
service. And then you exploded. I have to, well, I don't say exploded. You emerged, you blossomed.
Yeah, because service has always been, and I think people can find this when we're not focused on our flaws, when we are focused on our features. I always knew service was so important to me, right? Like I was in nursing school and I, worked at hospitals, and then I was in the hospitality industry as a leader, as an executive for so long. All of that was service. And now I see it all mattered. It's all part of it. But when I stopped trying to prove myself, and I stopped trying to do it on my own instead of with the one that could support me the most, then I really did step into that service in a way that fills me. Of course, it's serving others, but it also fills me. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm now a fountain instead of just this drain. Like I'm not just constantly giving of myself and then I have nothing else to give. Now I am hooked into the truth of who I actually serve. And I can serve others with that kind of unending love that only he can give.
I love this as a perfect ending. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dawn Ledet from theselftrustcoach.com. You will see all the proper links below. Make sure you see her. Maybe you're still stuck even after all this and you want a coaching session. That's where you want to go to get yourself moving. It could be those 20 minutes that change your life forever. So what are you waiting for? Here's is my challenge. Try to do this stuff. Try to see how it works and then tell us in the comments what happens when you actually did. Not really just read the advice and say, oh, I know all that. Just actually do it and then share it with a friend who's stuck and is going in circles, thinking, oh, I'm not good enough for this. And give it to them, share it, subscribe to the channel so you get every week more of this stuff. And be grateful. Be grateful because God gave you a life, most people a shelter, food, but He gave you talents. He gave you a brain. We can use that to change the world, and we can do that step by step. Sometimes the first step is to be still, turn off everything and be still. That's a message that in the last 3 months, as I focus more on interviewing Christians, has come out really powerfully. Be still. Isn't that true? So, anyway, thank you so much, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.